So let me try to give you some of my unbiased feelings on this. If you haven't noticed, I don't wear a watch. I haven't worn a watch in years. I don't know why you need a watch when it comes to when I have my phone. The only time I'm a big hot tub person. I like when I'm on cruises and stuff. I basically spend my time between golfing, the cafeteria, and the hot tub.
Just golfing on a cruise?
Well, the cruises go to places that have golfing. Yeah, I don't do the stupid driving range. I'm a very avid golfer. So boat gets to port. PGA professional on boat gets all the golfers together. We go on bus to course, play, come back, get hot tub. Meet wife for meals. That is literally the entire vacation for me. I pay the $200 for the week for the water spa pass. I don't do the normal hot tubs with the rest of the steerage. I do like the poshy full submersion pools with the waterfalls. Oh, it's so good. Just chilling there. But and I can tell you from experience that the iPhone is not waterproof.
Yeah. You didn't download that app.
Huh?
Because you didn't download the waterproof app.
Yeah.
No, it was the iOS 7, was it? I think that was 7.
Oh, that's right. There's somebody had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you go into the pool, the hot tub or whatever, you shouldn't take your iPhone with you, right? So I don't have time, and I'm supposed to meet my wife for a dinner, and sometimes they don't have a clock that's visible from my seat. That would be the only time I can see a watch being helpful, because watches are typically waterproof, right? Or at least water resistant, where up to 6 meters or something like that, but. So I can see that, but generally speaking, I don't see the point of a watch today. But I'm gonna probably get the Apple Watch. I'm mostly interested in it from the health things. I can see a device that takes that many measurements. I think it's going to be a huge bump in healthcare. There's already some places that I've been working with that are talking about writing. There's a company called Cardiac Advancements, and they have a product called AFib Alert, and they're talking about having us write an app using their algorithms. So we're not the heart people, but we're the software people. But writing an app that will pre-detect that you're going to have a heart attack. Wouldn't that be cool? You have a watch on, and the watch has an alert that goes off and says you need to get help before you drop, get to a hospital or something like that. Now, I mean, who knows how effective that's going to be, but just those kind of concepts. When you have large groups of people wearing these devices, I think there's even another level beyond that. Having the number of people that are wearing these is going to be a lot of data gathering, not attached to people's names, but attached to health ailments. So if we're taking people's, their heart rate and pulse and all this other crap that the thing takes, and we can we can connect that to different ailments and different areas of population and what those areas of population are eating. It might give us some information about, how to reduce heart disease and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of wearable devices, whether it comes from Apple or somebody else. We've already seen it being popular through, Fitbit and the Nike, what's the Nike one called?
Just a wearable or something?
No, it's got a name. The Nike Fuel bands. And there's a couple other companies that do the same thing. So these have already been popular, but if you can get all this functionality into a single device and add some more interactivity to it where you don't have to go tether it to a computer, I think there's some real advantages to it. So I'm going to try the watch out, even though I don't like wearing a watch. And we'll see, so it at least intrigued me enough from the point of view where I haven't worn a watch in significantly over a decade. I don't remember the last time I wore a watch. But it intrigued me enough to try it. Whereas I bet you it is. Most of the fact that they have the entire computer on a chip and then encased inside of it, I think means it'll probably be at least water resistant. Okay. Just like our current watches, where it's waterproof up to a certain depth. Huh?
I still wouldn't do that. Take a $350 watch in water. Oh, it's waterproof.
$350 for a watch is like dirt cheap compared to what some people spend on watches.
That's
I mean, I get it from a young people's perspective. It's like, look, I'm going to spend $50 max on a watch. That's only if it has 3 different stopwatches.
Those expensive watches and the Apple Watch, though, the Apple Watch might have a lifespan of 2 years.
Maybe that was something my wife and I were talking about. Is how often am I going to feel like I have to upgrade my watch?
You could pass down those other watches down to your grandkids.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, and that's a legitimate thing to consider. Like, I can see the entry level watch. I mean, so if you're going to have to upgrade your $350 watch every year, every 2 years, I don't think that's the end of the world. If you have I don't know how much the gold, what do they call that one?
Yeah.
The high end one of it. I'm guessing that's probably going to be $1,000 watch. I don't know. I don't know how much the price is going to bump just from their gold, the gold plating for their, their nice line. But my feeling is that one's probably not going to sell as well, because people are going to feel like they're going to want to upgrade their watch every year, unless Apple has some sort of trade-in program where they just swap out the guts or something like that. I don't know. But I see that as being a possible downside. If you always want to have the latest, greatest tech, maybe you don't, drop. My dad has he got this years and years ago. He has a Rolex, and then I don't know, 5 years later he had the face replaced with something that had diamonds on it because it's an investment piece or something. I don't really get that because I don't wear jewelry. But it's apparently it's worth more now than he paid for it. I don't know the deal with it, but I don't see this as being that. I see this as being a technology gadget. And melding the things like Fitbits into a timepiece, not for jewelry but for function. And what does that do to the idea of our typical watch? So an interesting thing to look at might be what will things like the Apple Watch, and then obviously the other guys are going to come out with competitors with similar things, and they're going to start one-upping each other, just like they've done with the phones. iPhone was first, Android came out. Android was very weak at the beginning. And then they've kept getting better and better and better, and now they keep stealing crap from each other, right? For years, Apple was saying that, the 3.5-inch screen is the correct size, blah, blah, blah. So they go from that to now the brand new phablet that the Galaxies have had for a while. That's saying, hey, people like the giant screen. Apple likes money. Let's go sell them a big screen. So now Android's gotten to the point, and I say this over and over again. I mean, Android's not as polished of a product because they're solving the harder problem. They're writing a piece of software for a bunch of different phones, but it's shocking how good Android is, given the problem they're solving. I mean, it's a solid operating system. So now you have 2 top-tier competitors that just keep one-upping each other. And that's really good for consumers because now we get great products. And the same thing's going to happen on the watch side. I think the watches that have come out prior to the Apple Watch have been kind of jokey, more niche. I think the Apple Watch might be a push in the right direction, and then they'll start coming out one-upping each other. But then we get back to this problem. We're going to have to upgrade our watch every year or every 6 months. It's like, oh my gosh, this other guy came out with a cool watch. Well, watches are cool again. I remember when I was a kid, I think watches were cool. Watches were never cool?
No.
Really?
Nope.
I think watches might have been cool at one point. I remember in school.
In the 70s when you had...
That's when I was a kid.
I know. Well, so was I.
So,
I don't know, did we just press your childhood? Because that's what it sounded like.
what's up?
Did we just press your childhood? Because that's what it just sounded
No, I don't necessarily. But I think it's it's very. See, that sounds just like my call. I got it from you.
Yeah. Well, I got it from Dad. So
You
that's...
should have released a video.
No, I wasn't anywhere near as sick. This was more just I couldn't even talk for a prolonged enough period of time because I was just in coughing fits. I mean, I felt crappy, but I didn't feel like that crappy. With the malaria thing, I was like a serious decision I had to make between getting out of bed to go to the bathroom or just going. I mean, I had to really debate that for a couple of those days. Not even lying. It's pretty crappy. What's it talking about?
It was also malaria.
Huh?
It was also malaria.
A weird form. Not full-fledged.
Still malaria.
Yeah. The Iowa variant. That's right. It's the same crap as here. It just sounds worse because it's African born. It does make a good story though.
I don't think
What's this year? We'll get a video released. Whoever gave
Ebola.
Ebola.
No, I usually get sick once a year. And typically it happens in the first couple weeks of school when everybody comes back and they bring back all the crap from wherever they've been living for the last 3 months. And then teachers typically have pretty high immunities, similar to people who work at hospitals, who just never get sick. But I bet you like that when they first started working in the hospital, they probably missed like 3 months of work at the very beginning as their system almost dies. And it's like survival of the fittest, literally. I guess the funny thing from this past weekend, though, is I started getting sick Friday morning. I was coughing in class Friday afternoon. And then right after class, I drove into Illinois for my niece's or my nephew's birthday. And I just progressively got sicker and sicker. So I just spent the whole weekend in bed in Illinois, my parents' house. My wife went and did all the other stuff, and I drove back on death's door. But apparently, this is a funny side story. Apparently, I already have a date for Valentine's Day. I guess this is the release date for the movie. I'm apparently taking my mother-in-law to see 50 Shades of Grey. That should make a very good Facebook post. Yeah, funny. Apparently she read the series, the books.
I mean, like, how did this arrangement get set up? And then
My wife just let me know about it.
like you're going.
Yeah, oh, I read the books.
You know, you did what you were working out.
Yeah. It's
Read
motivation.
the books or listen to the books?
Listen to the books. I don't read. I listen to audiobooks. Yeah, so I don't know. Time will tell with this watch thing. I think more will be revealed as we get closer to the beginning of the year as to what the watch will actually be. I think right now it's probably in a pretty early stage of software and hardware. So, more details will come out. We'll see.
The battery life will make it kill it.
They won't release it without good battery life. I bet you it'll last 3 days without charging. I think that'll be.
Depends on how much you use it, though.
No, I mean just on. But I get what you're saying. If you're
like actively playing with it, or like on a biking trip or a hiking trip, and you're having to use it for GPS or something in the middle of.
Depends on how much it relies on the phone.
Yeah, but then you also have to charge your phone every day too. Then.
Yeah, but the battery, if the watch is hurting their battery life on the phone, then you just blame it on the phone, not the watch.
Yeah, if it kills your battery life on your phone.
Yeah.
That might be even.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe they'll have the iWatch battery, or they didn't call it the iWatch, it's the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch battery pack for your phone.
Maybe.
It's like a shoe. You like a little, it's like a shoulder strap you hold on to. So it'll be interesting.
So are you going to bust out the new Apple Watch dice roller?
Oh yeah, that's my plan. Is as soon as they release WatchKit for writing software, I'm going to write a Dungeons & Dragons dice roller for the watch. I think that's handy. Sitting there playing, because I already have that for the phone, but now you got to pick up the phone every single time. Whenever you want to, it's your turn, Dungeons & Dragons, you got to roll 2d8.
Yeah, but if you're writing the program, how do we know you're not cheating?
Well, I'm not writing it for a specific game. I was writing a dice roller. What would be my benefit for cheating? I might not be cheating right. I might be making it artificially roll high when you're trying to roll low. I guess I could put in settings. How do you want to cheat?
How do you tilt your watch? If you have your watch this way, it rolls low, and if you go this way, it's high.
I guess that makes sense. I'll have to take that in consideration. But I could see that being kind of beneficial. But we'll see. I do think payments will be huge.
Yeah.
And actually, already this morning, I logged into my Chase Bank account. They're already advertising Apple payments through the Chase Bank app. So I think they got enough of the big players involved day one that I think it'll be kind of big. We'll see. And then you can just pay for stuff with a watch. See, that's why you get the watch. So your other stupid junky watch can't pay for stuff. That's why you get the Apple Watch.
Well,
So
it
that
could if you sell it.
this makes sense.
You got ones.
What's up?
You got ones. Sell it, then it's gone.
Yeah.
You can't sell it.
You can cash for it.
So out of curiosity, how many of you in here are getting a iPhone 6?
Sure.
Couple people. Which are you getting, the 6 or the 6 Plus?
6 plus.
6? Why not? Why the 6 instead of the Plus?
I don't like that big. 6 is cheaper.
6 is cheaper.
Plus the 6 Plus is just the 2 big ones. 6 Plus is probably the same size as my Galaxy right now. So it's not really much of a size difference.
I'm blind, so I have to.
Yeah, I want to get I want the big one so I can. I use it for all my, reading news and stuff like that. So why not have the? Well, I mean, I read short things. I don't sit there and read for 6 hours. Plus, I'm fat, so I have big enough pockets that the 6 Plus won't make any difference. Sometimes I have to fish around to find my current phone. So it's in there amongst other things.
Put a mini iPad in there.
I could fit a mini. I did. I could fit a mini iPad in my pockets. It's a little bit tight, but it goes in. Not the Air though. I've tried. To play.
YouTube channel. Can it fit in my pocket?
What's this?
You should make a YouTube channel. Can it fit in my pocket?
Maybe you'll make 130 cents a year.
Kind of like will it blend? Well, it's because you guys aren't watching enough of my videos. You're not clicking the ads.
So I'm saying maybe people are watching things go try to go in your pockets.
That creeped me out a little bit. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so we had a paper we wrote for today, right?
Yep.
And we were talking about iOS versus Android. Okay, so what did we come up with? What are some phrasing? That was phrasing. What are some? See, if I had the watch, we got the notification on my watch. So you were comparing and contrasting iOS versus Android, right? And then did I tell you to pick one, which is better and why?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about some of the differences between the two. Go ahead.
Multitasking is Android does better.
Okay, multitasking Android does better. Tell me about that. And then I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Oh no. I don't know. I just wrote it in my paper.
I don't know. I just put it in the paper. At the very least, multitasking is different between iOS and Android, right? What's different between the two? Go ahead.
I think it's because Android does more with it, but then it kills the battery life.
Okay.
iOS does only lets you do some things, certain things, but then it doesn't use as much power and battery life.
Okay. That's correct. So which is better?
Depends on if you're okay with having your battery life suckers. Or if
How many of you are okay with having your battery life suck on a mobile device?
I charge mine every night anyway.
Well, it depends how bad it really sucks as to whether or not charging it every night is even enough. Android's multitasking is based on a desktop. Android's based on the Linux operating system, and their multitasking model is what works well for desktop operating systems, and it is. a very, very, very good multitasking model for desktops. And we'll talk about that model in this class. But it didn't translate well to mobile devices because battery life. That's a problem. So Apple's version of multitasking, they tried to determine what things apps might want to do in the background and only allow apps to do those specific things if they wanted to when an app went into the background. So with iOS, by default, an app does not multitask. There's no aspects of the app running in the background when you minimize an app. So for those of you who have an iPhone and you have a bunch of apps running in the background and you think that your battery life is crap and you go and start closing apps, chances are you're wasting your time for the most part. The person who wrote that app has to specifically notice that the app's going into the background and decide it's going to connect to one of the 8 hooks of the operating system for doing things in the background like play music, GPS, that kind of stuff. So it goes on it's on each app to decide how much battery life it should use while it's while it's not in the forefront. Now, playing music in the background is not really a hugely battery dependent thing, but it does take up more battery than not playing music in the background. As you think about from the announcement yesterday, whether you're talking about the iPhone Plus can do 80 hours of music playback on a single battery charge or something. So we're not talking about a major, major drain, but more so than if it wasn't playing music. So I would argue that the multitasking model for iOS is superior for mobile devices over Android. Not superior in general. And the difference is, if you remember back to the early days of iOS versus Android in commercials, Android would talk about how they have multitasking, and Apple didn't even have any sort of multitasking in the early days. If you wanted to listen to your Pandora radio, that app was open. No putting it in the background. It was open. And the Android commercials would brag about this, right? But what they wouldn't brag about is the battery life. Battery life on Android was terrible. The devices had to be big and clunky to put big enough batteries in them. So finally Apple came out with their multitasking model, and then Android stopped bragging about it as them being the only one that had multitasking. So I would say for a mobile platform, Apple is superior. Now, here I'll play devil's advocate for a second though. Why is it that Android has not changed their multitasking model? I feel very confident.
Because battery technology has improved so much that it's not necessarily that it's not a problem anymore, but it's not as noticeable, I guess.
Okay, less noticeable?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Is it really... If you have 20 apps that you use regularly on your Android device, most of those apps don't need to be running in the background, correct? A handful of them are ones that we might want to be doing something in the background. But as it stands right now, with the current version of Android, every one of those apps is getting CPU time in the background. Even if our battery life is better, isn't that dysfunctional to the future of those products? Why haven't they updated it? I mean, I agree maybe the absolute necessity to upgrade it goes away a little bit with the better battery technology. But at the same time, if the other guy clearly has a superior, I'm speculating, clearly has a superior technology, why wouldn't you adopt it? Are there any advantages?
So you don't get sued by Apple?
There's probably some truth to that. I'm sure they could probably come up with a similar model, but that is an interesting point. I wonder what patents Apple has on. I mean, you would hope you can't patent what can be run in the background and what can't, but
They've done some pretty stupid things.
you get enough high-priced lawyers involved, and you don't know what can get. So that's possible. Let's say that's not the case. Are there any advantages to having everything run in the background versus having only certain things run in the background?
I suppose you can do more in the back. You can do more with apps than for just in the background.
Okay, tell me about that.
I'm just saying that if Apple restricts what apps can do in the background, it saves battery life, but it also limits what those apps can be designed to do.
Okay.
So if Android allows anything to be done in the background, then that opens up maybe other functionalities for the apps.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So as a Apple developer, we have to pick and choose what we want to do in the background. Apple decides what we are allowed to do in the background. As an Android developer, yeah, we're being less battery efficient, but we can do whatever the heck we want in the background. Now, that could be good and bad. From an altruistic developer's perspective, we have a lot of flexibility to do maybe good things in the background. But from what about a virus perspective? There are far, 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 far more viruses on Android, or virus-like apps on Android, than there are on iOS, by a lot. Why is that? Part of it is, from a developer perspective, we have total flexibility. We can do whatever we want. Also, from an App Store perspective, we can put any app up we want. It only comes down when people complain. By that time, the damage is done. On the Apple side, even first of all, they restrict what we're allowed to do. And then after that, there's a 7-day review process, a roughly 7-day review process, where Apple tests our app to make sure it's not doing funky stuff. Now, does that mean nothing gets through the cracks? No, certainly things can get through. But there's at least more layers, right? You're limited, and then there's more layers. And then on top of that, I would say in general, if you are a virus writer, path of least resistance is probably appealing to you, right? So why not write it on the platform where you can affect the most people? It's kind of a interesting stake. So why doesn't Android then close their model? Why don't they limit what you can do in the background? Maybe that's even more reason for them to adopt something similar to Apple. Why don't they?
Are they in platform independent?
Okay, well, that's the Java aspect. All Android apps are written in Java. Java's platform independent, but the only platform we even care about here is the Android platform, right? So why doesn't Android close their system? Because everything you do, when you use Java to write Android apps, you're still using the Android API. You're still using their development kit to make Android-y type stuff. The stuff that goes into the windowing interface and switching between apps, switching between views. So why don't they close it? They can save battery life. So now their phones that already have better battery technology will have even longer battery life. They can reduce viruses. So along the same level, why doesn't Android put in, for their Google Play Store, why don't they put in a review process? Amazon, which has an Android store, they have a review process similar to Apple. So if you write devices for Amazon's Android store, which runs on Amazon's devices, then he has to go through a review process, but it's still using Java and it's still running on Android. So it's still open on the what can run in the background perspective, but it's not, it's at least going through some sort of filter to see if there's a virus. But if Google just changed their multitasking model, they could increase battery life, reduce viruses, Why don't they do it?
Android's never been the type of phone that attempts to limit things.
Okay. Tell me more about that. I think you're right.
There are always more functionality, more power. It's your phone. You have access to do whatever you want with it versus
Take the good with the bad.
versus Apple's, okay, we're going to lock your phone and dumb it down. And
This is it.
yeah.
Yeah, so Google is the open one, right? Google is, here's all the power you want. You get the good with the bad. So the people who tend to be Android advocates tend to be, I would say in general, geekier people to a point, but certainly geekier people who are like, oh, well, for instance, I've always had the opinion with Windows. When I install Windows, I don't run an antivirus. It's a waste of time. My machine is going to be infected before the antivirus is just going to let me know when the end is near. So what happens? If I install Windows on a machine, I basically dedicated myself to having to reinstall the OS, once every month or two, something like that. No big deal. How long does it take to install the OS? If I keep everything in the cloud, it takes 45 minutes. And let the machine sit overnight, letting it re-download all your crap. Done. Now you're good for another month, another 2 months. So from a tech perspective, not the end of the world, and I don't have to deal with the crap. Now, so I would say that Android users maybe take a similar approach. Not to that extreme. I mean, I'm trying to use an extreme example, but they know there's going to be some negatives. But from their perspective, the positives outweigh the negatives. They have flexibility. They can do whatever they want to their phone. They can manipulate the operating system. The operating system is open source. So it's basically a mobile toolbox to do whatever you want. And that is appealing to a group of people, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We can point to, well, there is something wrong. We can point to things that are wrong with that, but at the same time, we can point to conflicting things that are right with that. So it's the end user's decision. On the flip side, what does Apple do? Apple says, here's your product. Take it or leave it. This is how it works. Sure, you have the group of people that do what? You can jailbreak the phone and you can, get around stuff and things like that, and then you get kind of the Android-y experience on that, the good and the bad.
warranty and Apple Pay 2.
Whatever. So, those become kind of interesting things, but I think the real answer to the question, why doesn't Google change their model to be more like Apple, is because it would be kind of the anti-Google way. Google is the open company. The one thing they are doing to back off a little bit from being completely open as they've been in the past is they are kind of reining back in their operating system from the point of view of not letting companies modify the operating system as much. With the effort of making sure when they release a new version of their operating system, as many companies as possible get the latest version of the operating system pushed out to their phones day one. Where before, you might have a Samsung phone that had a highly modified version of Android on it, to the point where new bugs were introduced into it because of how much they had to modify it. Where I think Google's trying to do away with some of that, but without changing the openness. Okay, what else? So multitasking, we can make the argument there's a difference between iOS and Android. I think you can certainly make an argument that from a mobile computing perspective, iOS's multitasking makes more sense. But I think you could also make the argument from a developer's perspective. As you pointed out, Android's multitasking is less restrictive. You could look at either of those as being a positive. I tend to fall on the side of consumers come first when it comes to the devices. So I would prefer to have the consumer experience to be polished and the developer's experience to be more handcuffed than the other way around. And I really think that is, from my perspective, that's kind of the difference between the two platforms. I think the user experience on Android suffers at the benefit of the developer. And I think on Apple, the developer suffers at the benefit of the user. I'd rather users be happy than developers. And that's more of an opinion than anything else. Okay, what else? What else is different between the two operating systems?
Security.
Okay, tell me about security.
Well, see, I didn't watch the announcement for Apple yesterday, but I think the security is better on the iPhone because you can wipe you can have that remote wipe that you can take down anything when you lose your iPhone. You can remove stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so interesting point. Where was that really driven from? That's less of a iOS versus Android thing and more of an iOS versus BlackBerry thing. Apple has made a major effort into getting into enterprise. Android less so. Not that they're not in enterprise, but Apple made a major push to become kind of the standard in enterprise for phones, taking over where BlackBerry left off. And part of that for big companies was being able to issue phones to people and remotely wipe data off those phones and that kind of stuff, having management tools for managing groups of phones. So from a security perspective on that side of things, I think we can say iOS is, and it almost goes hand in hand with this whole openness versus closedness thing. The proprietary nature of iOS and having Apple build in these enterprise tools for managing it makes it more friendly to enterprise. Not because of, I don't think Android is innately insecure.
I think at the end of the day, you can secure Android better than you can secure Apple.
Say that one more time.
I think at the end of the day, if you go into as far as you can secure your Android phone further than you can secure an Apple phone.
Why would you say that?
Just based off of encryption and all that you can do with the options on your phone.
Oh, okay. So you're saying as a user of the device,
Yeah.
Given just the two devices sitting in front of you, and given all the options that the user has available to them today,
Yeah.
a user of Android, if they wanted to put in the effort, could secure their device more so than an Apple. Possibly, yeah, that's possible. And that kind of goes back to because the number of applications, the number of tools available to you are greater on Android because of its openness. At the heart of it, both of them are basically the same operating system. Android is based on the Linux operating system. iOS is based on OpenBSD. It was a branch off of OS X, OS 10 for the Mac. So they're both based on pretty solid operating systems. Okay, so we'll stop there. One thing I want to start off, somebody remind me, next class, talking a little bit about iOS versus Android for Flash. Kind of an interesting story there. Hopefully I made it into a couple of your papers. Okay, the Flash thing. So interesting thing there. So somebody remind me, say talk about Flash or something. I'll see everybody on Friday.